Hey folks, I wanted to go over some of the cadences that we've been talking about in class and provide some examples for you. So the first one, like our umbrella category, is authentic cadences, and that's anytime we're going from a 5 or a 7 diminished to a 1 chord. And that 1 chord can either be a 1, like a major 1, or a minor 1. Now, a perfect authentic cadence is going to be a root position 5 to a root position 1. That can be major or minor. And the tonic has to be in the soprano voice, meaning that do has to be in the soprano part, whatever it is. So you can have the soprano having do, but if the 5 or the 1 isn't in root position, it's not a perfect authentic cadence. Or you can have a root position 5 and a root position 1, but if the tonic or do isn't in the soprano, it's not a perfect authentic cadence, it's imperfect. So the way that you might categorize imperfect authentic cadences, the soprano voice either has mi or so it doesn't have do, and that could be root position or not. The first chord, whether it's either a 5 or a 7 diminished, if it's a 7 diminished, it is immediately an imperfect authentic cadence. And then if any of the chords are in inversion, so you could have a 5 chord and a 1 chord, and if the 1 chord is in inversion, it's already imperfect authentic, even if, the do is in the soprano. If there's an inversion, it's automatically an imperfect authentic cadence. So let's go over some examples. So the only parts you really sort of need to pay attention to are these last 2 chords. But the other ones are there to sort of give you the key, give you some context to listen to. So we're in B flat major, and we have a root position 5. So we have F, C, and A. And then we have a root position B flat chord. We have B flat, F, D, and B flat. So these are both root position, which means it could be a perfect authentic cadence. And the soprano part on the last chord, on the 1 chord, has do. It has B flat. So it is a perfect authentic cadence. And here is what that sounds like. Okay, so our next authentic cadence, we are in C major. Again, the really important parts to look at are the last 2 chords. These are going to help us analyze what type of authentic cadence is. Now, it's important to note that we don't have an inversion in our 5 chord because we have a half note G that is counting as G here in this 5 chord. So we have G, B, D, and then a G up here in the soprano part. So we have a root position 5 chord, we have G major, and then we have a root position 1 chord as well. We have C, C, E, and G. Now, the reason that this is an imperfect authentic cadence rather than a perfect authentic cadence is because even though both of these chords are in root position, we have so in the soprano voice, so it can't be a perfect authentic cadence. And here is what it sounds like. Now, as a bonus, even though it is not necessarily germane to what we're doing, we've also been talking about 6/4 chords and special types of 6/4s. And in this little progression, we have 2 special types of 6/4 chords. We have a 5/6/4 here, which is acting as a passing 6/4 from a root position 1 to a 1/6 chord. So our bass line is walking C, D, E, and that 5/6/4 is acting as a passing 6/4. And then we have a cadential 6/4 here, the 1/6/4 before the 5, We have our so, do type of movement. So we have a cadential 6/4. All right, our next type of authentic cadence, we have something in minor. So we're dealing with a minor of some kind, right? And in this case, we would end up having kind of like a melodic minor because we have G sharp and then G natural. But we see at the end here, we have a 7 diminished 6/5 chord. So that is a 7 fully diminished 7 chord, and the third is on the bottom here. So in A minor, we have a root position 1. We have A, C natural, and E. But our 7 diminished chord, our 7 diminished 7, is going to be G sharp, G sharp, D, B, and then F. So we have it in inversion. Number one, it was already going to be an imperfect authentic cadence because we're dealing with a 7 diminished chord, but it's also an inversion. And the tonic is not in the soprano. So it kind of has 3 strikes against it for being a perfect authentic cadence. Here is what it sounds like. And again, just to note, we have a special type of 6/4 here. So we had a passing 6/4 on the previous slide where we went from 1, 5, 6, 4 to 1, 6. In this case, we have the opposite where we're going 1, 6, 5, 6, 4 to 1. Here we go. All right, so our half cadence, our traditional half cadence is when a phrase ends on 5. And it is usually, almost always, approached by 2, 4, or 1. So in this case, let's take a look at what our key is. We have 3 flats, so it could either be E flat major or C minor. Now, there are a lot of B naturals occurring, which means we're probably dealing with C minor. So we have a whole slew of chords. The ones that we're really worried about here are the last 2. So we see that 5 is approached. Again, it's usually by 4. Could be 2, could be 1, but we end on a 5 chord, giving us that sort of feeling of openness and like incompleteness that makes us feel like there's something else to be said, and we need another phrase or at the very least another chord to make us feel like we're at home with the tonic. Here's what this half cadence sounds like. All right, so that's our half cadence. Now we have a deceptive cadence. That's when we have a 5 that goes to something other than a 1. Now, usually it's the 6. That's the most common type of deceptive cadence, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be a minor 2 or a 3 or something else. So it's usually a 6, but that doesn't mean that it always has to be. So in this case, we're dealing with minor again, and one of the ways that we can tell that we're dealing with minor is that we have some F sharps. So even though we have 2 flats for B flat, we wouldn't really ever have an F sharp in B flat major. So it's probably a good indication that we're dealing with G minor. Plus, the likelihood of having a bunch of G minor type chords, not as likely in B flat major. Okay, so here is what this deceptive cadence sounds like. What we really want is for that 5 to go to a G minor to make it feel like it's landing on 1, it's landing on the tonic. And even though in the soprano voice, it kind of gives us that, everything else underneath it makes us feel like that is unsettled. We weren't expecting it to go there. And once again, we have a special type of 6/4 chord here. We have our so. Oh, I don't know if we would call it, I guess it could be a cadential 6/4. It's leading to a cadence, but a cadential 6/4 almost always leads to so do. So is it a cadential 6/4 or is it not? I would love to challenge somebody to find the answer to that and tell me about it after fall break. That'd be amazing. But let's move on to our next cadence type. We have the Plagal Cadence or the Amen Cadence. So that's the one that gives us that feeling, say if you're singing the doxology at the end, that Amen that we all know goes from 4 to 1. And we have our major 4 to major 1 here in C major. This is one of the easiest ones to identify aurally. It just, culturally for us, we tend to hear it a lot, so it stands out to our ears often. So there's that major 4 to major 1 sound of the Amen or Plagal Cadence. In this case, we have major 4 to major 1, but you can also have minor 4 to minor 1 as well. All right, here we go. We've got the Plagal half cadence. Again, this doesn't really happen all that often. It's a super weak cadence, but it's when we go from 1 to 4 instead of from 4 to 1. It might sound a little strange because we don't really hear it that much, but here is what the Plagal half cadence is called. And the reason why it's called Plagal half cadences are the ones that feel like they're very open, like that 5 chord makes us feel like, yeah, we really need to get back to the tonic somehow. And that's definitely how you feel with this 4 chord on the end. And because of that, it's a type of half cadence, but they put in Plagal because, like, yeah, it's on 4 instead of 5. So it is a movement from 1 to 4 at a cadence point. Again, super rare. I'm just putting it out there so that you know that it does exist, but you probably won't encounter it all that much. Okay, so now we have our Phrygian half cadence. This ends on 5, which is why we have that half cadence. It is a very special cadence. It is when we have a minor 4/6 to 5. I know that's so strange, but it's a minor 4/6 to 5. They're very special conditions. It only happens in minor keys. So that movement from 4/6 to 5 is going to indicate a Phrygian half cadence. It sounds really cool, but again, they don't occur all that often. You probably won't encounter it a whole lot. I think they sound really neat, and it's good to know that they exist. But again, probably not showing up in every analysis that you do. It's a really cool sound, but again, doesn't happen all that much. So we have that very open feeling, and it's approached from a minor 4/6. So that's the Phrygian half cadence. And those are all of our cadence types. Let me know if you have any questions.